For more than 17 years, we at Listen In have devoted ourselves to... I'm just kidding. We're doing a show. The topic of today's show is adapting to change in your business. Sometimes you have to, sometimes maybe you just want to. Either way, we're hoping to shed some light on when and how to do it. My name is Matt Bretz, and I am a principal and executive creative director at Eisenberg. You know, this show gives us an opportunity to have conversations again, to reprise some of the greatest things that I've learned from the amazing people that I've had to have the opportunity to work with, and give everyone else an opportunity and an invitation to listen in. So my guest today is Chris Do, the amazing Chris Do. Chris is the CEO and founder of The Future, which is the home of the 1 billion mission to teach 1 billion creatives how to make money doing what they love. And I think that's one of the most amazing missions that I've ever heard of. So I'm wondering if we could just kind of start there and have you tell us a little about that, Chris.
I'm a big believer in setting large, ambitious goals, big, hairy, audacious goals, a BHAG, if you will. I want to teach people, but I want to teach people in ways that leverage technologies, platforms, and new methodologies of teaching and learning that encapsulate everything I've learned in a 20-plus year career of running a business as being a creative, but also in the last 15 years of being a teacher, working very intimately with one to few. What can I do? What kind of impact can I make to pay it forward? And I thought, there's 8 billion people on the planet Earth, give or take. 1 in 8 sounds pretty ambitious, and 1 billion sounds pretty good.
But I know that people are struggling a little bit right now.
Yeah.
This massive kind of change in what I would call the market in its biggest sense, in like what ideas, what products, and what missions are people buying. That's changing. And so a lot of us are wrestling with, well, I'm afraid of doing things differently, and I don't know how to do things differently. I met you as the owner and lead of this CG and motion graphic design studio called Blind. I mean, you were at the top of your game, and then you decided to move to the future. So how did you identify that as the change that you wanted to make? And then do you remember kind of step by step how you set out to pursue it?
I really just wanted to try to create content to teach people, and I didn't really think about the revenue model or anything else or a sales funnel. I just wanted to give and create. Well, luck would have it that the first video that I actually do this with, that I just teach and I don't hide anything, I don't hold anything back, that video actually starts to take off. Now, not a viral hit by any imagination, but for us, it was big numbers. It was doing 10x the numbers that we were getting before. So that was our first clue into like, if you want to build an audience, you got to show up, you got to deliver value, you got to have no strings attached, and you give with a very generous spirit and don't expect anything back. And that was the beginning of like, I think there's something here.
I was curious, what were the most confrontational or frightening aspects of making that transition? I mean, would you cop to that there were some?
No, many fears. The first one was, I thought that if I said something that somebody could perceive as being negative or too transparent, that it would dramatically and negatively impact our business. Clients wouldn't call, they would get offended. But after a while, I realized something. It's mostly in your head. Clients are too busy, too successful to be watching your dumb YouTube channel in the first place, let alone be sitting there hanging on your word. So there were no negative ramifications as far as impacting our business. And another really big fear was, is this a real business model? Is there anywhere we're going with this? Or is this just going to be a hobby where we make a couple of videos, have a few laughs, and 100 or so people show up? But to my surprise, and this did take some time, over the course of a couple of years, the 3,000 audience that showed up to subscribe to our channel became 20,000, became 100 to 200, and now we're past, we're almost hitting 800,000 subs right now, which is, it blows my mind because really we do very unsexy things. We talk about design, we talk about pricing, we talk about marketing, and this is not like viral mainstream content, not in any stretch of imagination.
So I asked you kind of what the most frightening or challenging aspects of adapting your business to a new vision or a new market, depending on what it is, were. What were some of the most surprisingly rewarding aspects?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so many things to talk about here. So here's a couple like really nice things. I knew young people would show up. I knew amateurs, wannabe professionals, transition people would show up for sure because they need help and we're there for them. What surprised me is that my peers were watching, my clients were watching, and it's led to like really wonderful conversations. And I'll tell this right now. I'm friends with one of your partners, Eric Eisenberg, and I've known Eric for over 2 decades now. But he's never called me until we started making content on YouTube. Now, here's the personal stuff. The personal stuff is this, is I now have a business that generates money on a basically passive income. It makes money all day and all night, no matter what I do. So I get to travel the world. I get to do talks and meetups. I get to travel with my youngest son, who's homeschooled, and we get to do stuff, and I'm not worried about making money anymore. And it's awesome. And we've built up a community of people that run across the entire planet who show up because they want to learn with us, because they feel some kind of connection and bond.
And it's clear that in making your move to this chapter, that was more or less a conscious move. Even if you didn't quite know all of these rewards that you would get, you knew that you wanted to move in the direction of giving to people, you know. So I want to make that pivot now to one of the reasons that I thought that this your experience would be very topical right now is that there are probably many people right now who are being forced to make that adaptation, who are looking at a market that's changed where people don't touch each other anymore and can't gather together anymore, and there's no more travel for the time being. And so, that obviously impacts so many lines of business that you and I work with very closely, right? I mean, think about the people whose whole niche was making outdoor advertising or experiential. And so I guess I wanted to ask you, how do we begin to adapt what we do and what we make from your experience to a new normal, whether it's driven by a personal passion or a situation like with the COVID-19 virus?
In times like this, where change is thrusted upon you in this moment of crisis, I think there's opportunity here. I have friends who have been developing tools to do virtual cinematography. We see restaurants adapting. This is an opportunity, and I think this is going to separate people who are agile, who move fast, who have good ideas, from people who are slow, who are stuck, who are waiting for, who are sheltering in a metaphorical sense for this to kind of pass.
I'm curious with this question whether are there ways that you feel like the future is adapting to the new normal? Like, is there a way that you're approaching sort of storytelling, narrative, or new standards of production, or have you changed your staffing or anything? Are there ways that this time period has changed the way that you do that thing you do?
I want to tell a little story here, fable, the story of the ant and the grasshopper. The grasshopper plays all summer long and just doesn't think about the future, and then winter comes and the grasshopper dies, whereas the ant's been working, preparing, so during winter they're feasting. And I feel like a lot of companies have accidentally or with intention have prepared for this moment in time. And so I'm happy to share, here's what we think, here's what we've learned, here are the tools that we're using. They need to learn that great teachers don't make great on-air personalities, and charismatic on-air personalities don't make great teachers. They have to find that hybrid. And I shared this idea before, long before COVID happened, that I said, you really need a master who's really great at teaching, who understands the foundations to create the curriculum and the course, the knowledge. And if they're not the best person to present it, hire an actor. I know it sounds very strange to do this. It sounds really strange. Hire an actor, give them their script, have them deliver the performance of their life so they're super engaging, because we want to learn, but we want to be entertained as well. And then the students, none the wiser, have somebody speaking to them and relating to them that they feel like, you're like me, and I want to learn from you. And this is the model that Hollywood has been using forever. The person who speaks the words are not the person who writes it. The person who directs it is different than the editor, different than a cinematographer. And we can see in that model, it's worked really well because there's a lot of money being spent producing films, and a lot of them suck. So just take some version of that and use that as a way for you to disseminate information. It doesn't need to be the solo act of one auteur to make this. It shouldn't be that way. It should be a team of collaborators to make the best content. That's what we should be competing on.
I was watching the experiential end of the whole frontline marketing spectrum, from above the line marketing down to one-to-one influencer content. A new kind of anchor in there was experiential, which was connecting people's digital lives with their actual physical social lives in a way that was very fulfilling. And suddenly the blankets, been ripped out from under them, or the tablecloth has been pulled out from under them, and they can't do what they're doing in the same way at all. So how do they apply this idea, do you think, of be collaborative and use each person to their strength? That's what it's coming down to.
Here's a radical idea. You make something, you serve people in a certain way, but maybe really what you're in the business of is developing customer relationships and delivering an amazing experience, as you were talking about. But I think really, what are we all? Aren't we in the content business? And if we're not, maybe we're playing the wrong game. I'll give you an example. I have some shelves behind me. They're like these modern shelves that you can hang on the wall, and they look beautiful. It actually took me a long time to figure out what to order because there is no instruction, or very poor instructions laid out on the site. So I think I'm a pretty persistent, relatively intelligent person. I'm going to figure this out, and I do. And then I hang them, and it's even more headaches, and things don't come together. When I realize how many more shelving brackets or units could they have sold if they thought of themselves first as an educational content company. Like, here's your space. Here's how you organize. Here's how you declutter. Start there from a good place, because that's a thing that a lot of us want. So now I know what you stand for, not just what you make. And then educate me.
One of the other things I was wondering about is what's literally are you doing, do you find, to suss out what the new normal is for you or for the world in general? Like, are you, what's Chris Do's thing? Do you listen to podcasts, read the papers, watch CNN? How are you determining what you think this new world and new market will be?
What I'm doing is, as I have been doing the last couple of years, which is I'm trying to have very direct communication with the people who care about us, who use our products and services, even our frenemies, people who pretend to like us but are really or don't like us at all. And I read what they write as a reaction to the things that we produce. And I find that in there, if you have the stomach for it, is a lot of honesty, whether it's real or not. They're putting it out there, and it's some raw energy, and then you start to feel it. How do we guide our content? I went simply on Twitter, and I don't have a giant following relative to others, but I just asked, there's a lot of things we can make right now. What's going to help you? The way that I also kind of figure out what's going on is I like to watch what people are doing on the edges, hackers or people that don't fit in a neat little box. They're not normal people, cinematographers who use video game engines to do cinematography. It's like, you don't fit in a box, and I just want to watch what they're doing because I think they're like the canaries. They're so far out on the edges that perhaps they're doing something that they may not even recognize their own brilliance, but then you, as the person who's like the hub of this wheel, can connect those spokes and bring them together and say, look, that's what they're doing. They're on the frontier. Let's bring those ideas back. How can we apply and implement these things?
I was wondering what new resources or tools you're finding most exciting in this period.
It's forcing me to look at the technologies we already have and seeing what else, like just asking, like, what else can we do with this? What else can we try? And so I have a little ATEM mini switcher from Blackmagic here, which is fairly inexpensive to allow me to switch between 4 different video sources. And now I'm thinking, okay, I have all these cameras laying around here. How else can I make this just not you and I staring at each other? So I can cut to a slide, or I can cut to an overhead shot where my hands are drawing something, because then it starts to become more like real life. Because in real life, you and I are not just staring at each other. Our eyes will wander, or we'll change our position to like, oh, that's what's going on up there. So I think our brains are not wired to sit and stare at a static image for very long because we get bored. So this is why music videos especially like do a cut like every few seconds, or commercials, right? It is because we know we're losing you. And so we have to adopt new ways of communication, because it was hard to be in a meeting with your coworkers for an hour and a half. It's dreadful doing it on Zoom. So we got to figure out new ways. We have to implement like whiteboarding or some alternative ways to bring it in. And I don't know what that looks like just yet, but we keep experimenting and trying.
I'm thinking about what the Chris Do line on change is, because like some people find change very difficult. Other people really love change. But, you know, coming from the space that you're in, I'm curious whether you love it or hate it or something in between. But mostly I'm curious what you would say to other folks who are out here listening in on us and who are having trouble seeing the way for them to adapt to this new situation. What would you have to say to them to try to get them started to take advantage of this opportunity, as you called it?
Okay. I no surprise, I love change. I live in this space. I change and move very fast. It's even uncomfortable for my team who are also change agents. So it's like we're moving and the target moves all the time. Let's do that. And I believe change is an evolutionary advantage. So if that's the case, it's like, why aren't people changing? And I think it's a couple of things. Resistance is one. It's because new habits scare us. Uncertainty scares us. And we have an attachment to what's come before. And it's like when you peer out into the darkness, the void that's ahead of us, the future's unknown. It's a scary place, and I acknowledge that. But I think a lot of like what we were thinking about in terms of pre-COVID was this is the way things are always going to be, and it was an illusion. So we think and we take comfort in security, like this is how it's always been, but how it's always been can change in a week or 30 days. And so I think. You had said something brilliant earlier, which is, you know, I've had this moment. There have been dark days running a company, even a small size firm that we have, in that I've had a fantasy when things don't go well, when people aren't doing what I want and it's frustrating. You work all year and you don't make any money and it's not going anywhere, or a client just steps on your head for a while, like, oh, what are we doing? So the fantasy is, I wish I could start over. I wish I didn't have all this so that I can have a clean slate. And even as the CEO and founder, I could literally just let everybody go, change the entire business. But even then, it's a hard thing to do. And here we are. The world, the environment, nature has said, hey, dummy, start over. Right? I mean, we're all kind of sheltering in place. We haven't gone to see a movie. I haven't had sushi in a while. So what are we going to do? And if we can just embrace what's happened and look into the future now and ask ourselves that question, like what opportunities are out there because of this? Think about the businesses that are thriving, connect with them and see what kind of things they're writing.
So we've done a lot of talking today about how we can adapt our product to a changing market. And before we go, I want to recap, as always, the insights that emerged. Start by having big, hairy, audacious goals, as Chris puts it.
You transform in the pursuit of that goal.
Make your product offering about giving, not expecting something back. I read this week, if you have a choice between striving to create value or success, go for value. It will always create success. That's from Sarah Blakely at Spanx. Focus on the changes around you as opportunities.
It would be an opportunity loss if we return to the normal way and we just go right back to our old habits.
Don't go it alone. Team up. You don't have to be great at everything. Start doing and making, and you'll discover who else you need. Your real business is developing relationships and delivering amazing experiences to your customers. Know what you stand for, not just what you make.
Every product company especially should be a content company first, because if you teach me, you build trust, I get smarter, and I believe what you believe, and then I now need to get the part because I'm going to do this thing.
Ask your customers what they want. Keep an eye on the fringe. Today's freakishly weird new product is tomorrow's trend. It's just waiting for your insight to make the conversion. And what else can you do with what you have? It's kind of a hard time to get new stuff. Don't let this limit you.
Experimenting, and that's where we have a lot of fun.
Start over, dummy. In a few years, you'll be looking back and wishing you could.
I think there's opportunities, like I've said, opportunities to do something new and different.
Chris Do, thank you so much for being on the show. We learned a lot.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Matt. We're longtime collaborators and friends, and I'm so happy to do this episode, this broadcast with you today.
What an amazing chat. If you liked what you heard on this episode of Listen In, please drop us a note at listenin@eisenberg.com and share your insights. You'll always find the full version of each episode of Listen In here on AList. And you can check out Eisenberg's LinkedIn page every Tuesday morning for a 10-minute version. Please always think about who you know that might benefit by these insights and share the episode with them. Oh, and don't forget to like us before you go. Till next week on Listen In, keep your ears on.